All right, let's talk about something we all think we understand, the market. We use them every day, right? A place to buy and sell. Simple. But what if that's just the tip of the iceberg? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and show you the hidden social blueprint that actually builds the world of commerce all around us.
So let's just ask it straight up. What really is a market? Because the answer, as you're about to find out, is so much more complex and, frankly, more fascinating than just supply and demand.
Here's the core idea we're diving into. Markets aren't these abstract, impersonal forces that just happen to us. No, they're living, breathing, complex social systems. And the most important part? We build them, all of us, together, piece by piece.
Okay, so let's get into it. First up, we're going to look past the simple act of buying and selling to see the market for what it truly is, a vast, interconnected social web.
You see, from a sociologist's point of view, a market isn't just a place. It's an entire ecosystem, constantly being shaped by our culture, our politics, and our social relationships. And get this, it's not just about people. It's also shaped by what are called non-human actors. We're talking technology, physical objects, even the specific language we use. You're going to want to hang on to that idea because it's a really important one.
So, if markets are that complicated, how in the world do we even begin to understand them? Well, sociologists don't just wing it. They've got a pretty powerful toolkit for deconstructing these systems to see what really makes them tick.
The bedrock principle for this whole approach is something called social embeddedness. Now, it sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually simple and profound. It just means that no economic action, not a single purchase you make, not one business strategy, ever happens in a vacuum. Everything is deeply tangled up in the society and culture surrounding it.
And this toolkit has 5 main lenses to help us see the full picture. First up, network analysis, which is basically about mapping who's connected to whom. Then there's field analysis, which looks at the power struggles. Who are the big shots and who gets to set the rules. Performativity is a really fascinating one. It shows how technology and language aren't just passive tools. They actually become active players shaping the market. Then we zoom out with political economy to see the role of government and other big institutions. And finally, population ecology looks at how all the players try to adapt to this messy environment and why some succeed and others fail.
So keeping that toolkit in mind, we can now turn to a really powerful theory that puts it all together. It's called market system dynamics. And this is where we shift from just asking why markets are social to really understanding how they get built.
But before we get there, we got to talk about consumer culture theory, or CCT. This was a total game changer. It basically threw out the old idea of consumers as just these passive wallets waiting to be opened. Instead, CCT said, no way. Consumers are active agents, using what they buy to build their identities, to create meaning, and to co-create culture itself.
Market system dynamics, or MSD, takes that idea and just blows it up. This is the main lens we're using today. It takes the active consumer from CCT and then zooms way out. It looks at all the levels, from the individual to the group to the entire society, to see how this whole ecosystem of actors, both human and non-human, work together to literally construct the market realities we live in.
So here's the key difference. Think of CCT as a microscope. It zoomed way, way in on the individual consumer's world, their experiences, their identity. But MSD is like a telescope. It zooms out to show you how that very same consumer is just one part of a huge, sprawling system of interaction between companies, media, tech, government, you name it. And when you take that wide-angle view, wow. You realize the cast of characters co-creating a market is huge. It's so much more than buyers and sellers. We're talking activists, journalists, government regulators, scientists, even religious authorities can play a role. And yeah, there are those non-human actors again. A new piece of technology, a specific object, they are all active players in this story. Now, this isn't just an academic exercise. The really cool thing MSD research shows is that this process of co-creation can lead to amazing positive changes in the world. When markets function well, they can be incredible engines for prosperity, for reducing poverty, for fighting social stigma, and even for breaking down old, oppressive hierarchies. But it's not always such a rosy picture. That idea of the empowered, creative consumer
has some really powerful critics who see a much darker dynamic at play.
Enter the French sociologist Jean Baudrillard. He had a very different and much more cynical take on all this. For him, when we consume, we're not just buying a product. We're actually manipulating a complex code of social signs and meanings.
And the contrast between these two views is just, it's night and day. Where CCT sees an active co-creator, Baudrillard sees a passive subject who's just decoding a code that someone else has written for them. And where CCT sees marketing as just another tool in the system, Baudrillard sees it as a one-way street, a tool of domination that leads to a flat, one-dimensional society with very little real freedom.
Baudrillard's critique really gets at a crucial point. We can't just assume that all markets are transparent. The truth is, many of them are completely opaque. They're like that iceberg. The real rules that make things work are hidden beneath the surface, encrypted by powerful insiders who know how to read the code that the rest of us can't see.
So what's lurking down there in the murky depths? Well, this is where you find all sorts of problems. We're talking about hidden favoritism, systemic power imbalances, rules of the game that are impossible for an outsider to figure out, and, at its worst, the market being used as a weapon for one group to dominate another.
Okay, so we've seen how markets are socially constructed, and we've also looked at the powerful critiques of that idea. So where does this all leave us? What's the market's next chapter?
If there is one thing you take away from this explainer, let it be this. Markets are not forces of nature like gravity that we just discover. They are systems that we make. And realizing that these powerful and often opaque systems are something we all have a hand in creating, well, that's the very first step toward figuring out how to consciously make them better.
And this whole field is alive and kicking. Researchers are tackling huge new questions, like how do different political systems shape markets? How does your family life or your religion change your role as a consumer? But maybe the biggest and most important shift is this. Researchers are saying we need to stop focusing only on what happens in the market and start asking what the market does to our society as a whole.
And that really brings us full circle. If the market is a story, a blueprint that's constantly being written and rewritten by every single person who participates in it, well, that means you're one of the authors. So the real question is, what chapter will you add?